You think decades of flying have already taught you everything. You check in early, you pack with care, you follow every printed instruction, and you walk through the terminal feeling completely in control. That confidence is exactly what a former flight attendant wants you to question. After years of watching travelers repeat the same avoidable habits, she says the real danger is never the flight itself. It is the small routines passengers never think twice about. Airlines will not slow down for you, gate agents will not pause the boarding process, and security lines will not wait while you fix a problem you could have avoided at home. Today, we are breaking down 12 mistakes she watched happen over and over, mistakes that quietly cost travelers money, comfort, and sometimes an entire vacation. Stay close, because one of these mistakes alone has stranded more passengers than turbulence ever has. Before we continue, if you find this helpful, take a second to subscribe and turn on notifications. This channel is built for travelers who want to fly with confidence instead of stress, and every video is meant to protect your time, your money, and your next trip. Mistake 12. Ignoring the safety demonstration because you have heard it before. She remembers standing at the front of the cabin, watching rows of passengers put on headphones, close their eyes, or scroll through their phones the moment the safety demonstration began. Most of them had flown dozens of times, so they assumed there was nothing new to learn. That assumption has cost people precious seconds during real emergencies. Every aircraft is slightly different. Exit rows shift, oxygen mask mechanisms vary, and brace positions depend on seat placement. A passenger who tunes out because the routine feels familiar is the same passenger who hesitates when it matters most, fumbling with an unfamiliar buckle or looking around confused while others already know exactly what to do. Flight attendants are trained to notice who is paying attention because in a real evacuation, those extra seconds decide everything. The smart move is simple. Watch every single time, note where your closest exit is, count the rows to it, and keep your seatbelt visibly fastened during the flight. It takes less than 2 minutes and it costs nothing, yet almost no one does it consistently. Confidence built on old experience is still no substitute for paying attention in the present moment. Flight crews often say, the passengers who ask the most questions during boarding are usually the safest ones, simply because they never assumed the routine would stay exactly the same. Taking 30 seconds to glance at the safety card in the seat pocket, even briefly, can reveal small details that differ from what you remember, and those small details are often the ones that matter most in an unexpected situation. The next mistake on this list proves that convenience can be just as dangerous as carelessness. Mistake 11. Using airport Wi-Fi without a VPN. Travelers connect to free airport Wi-Fi the moment they sit down, checking email, logging into banking apps, and confirming hotel reservations without a second thought. It feels harmless because the network has the airport's name attached to it. In reality, public airport networks are one of the easiest places for data theft to happen, and scammers sometimes create fake networks with nearly identical names just to trick distracted travelers into connecting. Once connected, anything typed on an unsecured connection can potentially be intercepted, including passwords, card numbers, and personal messages. Most people never notice anything wrong until weeks later, when strange charges appear or accounts get locked. A former flight attendant who has watched thousands of travelers pass through terminals says this mistake is invisible, which is exactly why it works so well against confident, experienced flyers. The smart move is to avoid logging into anything sensitive on public Wi Fi, use a VPN if you plan to browse at all, and save banking or shopping for a secured home connection instead. It takes 30 extra seconds to protect yourself, and that small habit can prevent a financial headache that follows you long after the trip ends, unlike the next mistake, which can end your trip before it even begins. Mistake 10: booking flight connections that are too short. A cheap connecting flight can look like a great deal until the layover turns into a sprint through unfamiliar terminals. Airlines sometimes schedule connections as short as 40 minutes, technically legal, but unrealistic once you factor in taxiing, gate distance, security rechecks, and any small delay on the first flight. She has seen travelers arrive breathless at a gate only to watch the door close in front of them, forced to rebook, wait hours, and sometimes pay extra fees for a mistake that started with a booking decision made weeks earlier. Longer layovers feel like wasted time when booking, but they are actually insurance against the unpredictable nature of air travel. A short connection assumes everything goes perfectly, and airports rarely cooperate with perfect plans. The smart move is to choose connections of at least 90 minutes for domestic flights and closer to 2 hours for international ones, especially if you need to change terminals or clear customs. It may mean a slightly longer day of travel, but it also means far less stress and a much lower chance of missing your next flight entirely. She also suggests checking whether a connection requires switching terminals entirely, since some airports separate international and domestic gates by a significant distance, sometimes requiring a shuttle or a lengthy walk that eats into any buffer you thought you had. A slightly longer layover on paper often turns into the calmest part of the entire trip, which brings us to a mistake that has nothing to do with timing and everything to do with comfort. Mistake 9: wearing flip-flops or bare feet on the plane. Comfort matters during a long flight, so travelers slip off their shoes. Some even walk to the restroom in flip-flops or socks alone. It feels relaxed until something unexpected happens. Cabin floors collect spilled drinks, dropped food, and sometimes sharp debris from meal carts, and in the rare case of an emergency evacuation, passengers may need to walk across broken glass, hot surfaces, or debris on the tarmac. Flight attendants are trained to notice footwear because it directly affects how quickly and safely someone can move in an emergency. Flip-flops fall off during fast movement, bare feet offer zero protection, and fumbling to find shoes during an evacuation wastes seconds that genuinely matter. The smart move is to keep closed, low-heeled, comfortable shoes on or within immediate reach at all times, especially during takeoff and landing, since those are statistically the most critical phases of flight. It is a small adjustment that costs nothing and barely affects comfort, yet very few travelers think about it until someone points it out. She also suggests avoiding loose slippers or backless sandals during turbulence, since sudden movement can send unsecured footwear sliding down the aisle, leaving you barefoot exactly when stability matters most. The next mistake is even more common, and it involves something many travelers pack without a second thought. Mistake 8: putting essential medications in checked luggage. Checked bags get lost more often than most travelers realize, and when that bag disappears, so does everything inside it. Including medications some passengers cannot go a single day without. She recalls passengers arriving in tears at the gate desk, realizing their heart medication, insulin, or blood pressure prescriptions were sitting in a suitcase somewhere on the tarmac while they boarded a plane with nothing but a boarding pass in hand. Airlines can take hours or even days to locate a missing bag, and in an unfamiliar city, replacing a prescription is rarely simple, fast, or affordable. This is one mistake that goes beyond inconvenience, it becomes a genuine health risk. The smart move is to always carry essential medication in a carry-on bag, in its original labeled container, along with a printed list of prescriptions and dosages in case a pharmacy or doctor needs to verify anything abroad. Pack a few extra days' worth in case of unexpected delays, because travel rarely goes exactly according to plan. Protecting your health should never depend on a suitcase making it to the same city you do. It also helps to research pharmacy access at your destination beforehand, since some medications available over the counter in one country require a prescription elsewhere, and a language barrier can make an already stressful situation even harder to manage. Planning ahead for medication is one of the simplest ways to protect an entire trip, which brings us to a mistake involving something many travelers consider part of the vacation experience. Mistake 7. Drinking too much alcohol before or during the flight. A pre-flight drink feels like the start of vacation, relaxing nerves and easing the weight at the gate. The problem is what happens once that drink meets cabin altitude. Airplane cabins are pressurized to simulate roughly 6,000 to 8,000 feet, which means the body absorbs alcohol faster and processes it differently than on the ground, often intensifying dehydration, dizziness, and fatigue. She has seen passengers who felt perfectly fine at the airport bar become unsteady, nauseous, or disoriented mid-flight, sometimes needing medical attention that could have been avoided entirely. Beyond the physical effects, intoxicated behavior on a plane can also lead to removal from the flight, fines, or even a temporary travel ban depending on the airline and destination. The smart move is to treat pre-flight drinks the same way you would treat driving. Moderation matters, and hydration matters even more. Drink water consistently throughout the flight, limit alcohol to 1 or 2 servings at most, and remember that thin cabin air affects the body differently than a night out at home. Feeling good at takeoff means nothing if you feel miserable by the time the plane lands. She also points out that certain medications interact poorly with alcohol at altitude. So travelers taking daily prescriptions should check with a doctor beforehand rather than assuming a single drink is always harmless. The next mistake happens long before boarding even starts. Mistake 6. Arriving at the airport too late for modern travel delays. Older travel habits taught people to arrive an hour before departure, and for decades, that was enough. Airports today are different, with longer security lines, understaffed checkpoints, larger crowds, and stricter identification requirements that slow everything down. She has watched confident travelers walk in expecting the calm airport experience they remember from years ago, only to find a security line wrapped around the terminal and a boarding time slipping away with every passing minute. Arriving too late does not just risk missing a flight, it also creates rushed decisions, forgotten items, and unnecessary stress that follows travelers straight onto the plane. The smart move is to arrive at least 2 hours early for domestic flights, and closer to 3 hours for international departures, especially during holidays, weekends, or peak travel seasons. That extra buffer allows time for unexpected lines, mobility needs, restroom breaks, and a calm walk to the gate instead of a stressful sprint. Airports have changed, and travel habits need to change along with them. She often reminds travelers that arriving early is never wasted time, since a calm terminal walk beats a rushed sprint every single time, and even if security moves quickly, that extra time can be spent resting, hydrating, or simply settling in before a long flight. The next mistake involves something almost every traveler carries, but very few actually prepare properly. Mistake 5: forgetting to keep a portable charger fully charged. A portable charger feels like a safety net until the moment you actually need it and discover it never got charged before leaving home. Flight delays, long layovers, and gate changes all rely on a working phone for updates, directions, and communication with family. She has seen passengers stranded with a dead phone during a delay, unable to check gate information, contact a hotel, or even show a digital boarding pass. Forced to rely on strangers or overworked airport staff for basic help. A portable charger with no charge of its own is simply extra weight in a bag. The smart move is to fully charge every device, including the portable charger itself, the night before travel, and to pack the charging cable somewhere easy to reach, rather than buried at the bottom of a bag. Keeping a phone charged is not just about convenience. It becomes essential during unexpected delays, emergencies, or last-minute changes that happen more often than most travelers expect. A fully charged phone keeps you informed and connected exactly when it matters most. She recommends testing the charger a day or two before travel, not just plugging it in the night before, since a faulty cable or a worn-out battery often reveals itself only once you actually try to rely on it. The next mistake involves the very outlets many travelers rely on to solve this same problem. Mistake 4: charging your phone at public airport USB ports. Public charging stations look convenient, built directly into airport seating and walls for exactly this purpose. What many travelers do not realize is that USB ports can transfer data as easily as power, and criminals have been known to tamper with public charging stations to access connected devices, a method sometimes called juice jacking. She has warned travelers for years that plugging a phone into an unknown port is riskier than most people assume, especially in busy international terminals where security oversight varies widely. A compromised device can expose personal photos, saved passwords, banking apps, and private messages without the owner ever noticing until much later. The smart move is to use a standard wall outlet with your own charging brick instead of an unknown USB port, or carry a charging-only cable that physically blocks data transfer while still allowing power through. It is a small precaution that takes almost no extra effort, yet it protects an enormous amount of personal information. Convenience should never come at the cost of security. Many travelers assume that because a charging station is built into airport furniture, it must be safe. But ownership and maintenance of these ports vary widely, and travelers rarely have any way to verify who installed them or when they were last inspected. The next mistake follows that same theme in a completely different part of the airport experience. Mistake 3: packing all your valuables in checked baggage. Jewelry, cash, electronics, and important documents sometimes end up packed into checked luggage simply because there is more room than in a carry-on bag. That decision hands control of your most valuable items to baggage handlers, conveyor belts, and an entire system you cannot see or monitor. She recalls travelers filing claims for missing valuables, only to be told that airlines limit liability for high-value items placed in checked bags meaning even a successful claim rarely covers the actual loss. Checked bags are also handled by dozens of people before they reach the carousel, and theft, damage, or simple misplacement happens more often than travelers like to admit. The smart move is to keep anything irreplaceable or expensive in a carry-on bag that stays with you at all times, including jewelry, important documents, prescription medication, and electronics. If a checked bag is delayed or lost, the inconvenience should be limited to clothing and toiletries, not memories, valuables, or essentials that cannot easily be replaced. Protecting what matters most starts with deciding what never leaves your side. A small pouch or a zipped inner pocket kept close to the body works far better than trusting an external bag pocket, since valuables that are easy for you to reach are often just as easy for someone else to notice. The next mistake happens after boarding, when many travelers assume the hard part of the trip is already finished. Mistake 2. Failing to watch for last-minute gate changes. Passengers settle into a seat near their assigned gate, relax, maybe order food, and stop checking the departure board altogether. Gate changes happen more frequently than most travelers expect, sometimes announced quietly over the intercom or updated only on a screen without a clear alert. She has watched entire families realize their flight was boarding from a gate. Across the terminal, with only minutes remaining, forced into a frantic run through crowded hallways while gathering bags, coats, and children along the way. By the time some travelers notice the change, the walk alone eats up most of their remaining time before boarding closes. The smart move is to enable flight notifications on your airline's app, glance at the departure board every 20 minutes or so, and avoid wandering too far from a gate area without checking updated information first. A gate change is a normal part of airport operations, not an emergency, as long as it is noticed early enough to react calmly instead of scrambling at the last possible moment. Staying alert during the waiting period protects the calm start every traveler hopes for. She recommends choosing a seat within clear view of a departure screen whenever possible, rather than one facing away from it, since a quick glance while reading or resting is far easier than getting up every time you want to confirm nothing has changed. The final mistake on this list is one almost every experienced flyer assumes cannot happen to them. Mistake 1. Assuming every airline has the same carry-on rules. This is the mistake, she says, catches even the most experienced travelers completely off guard. After years of flying one particular airline, passengers memorize the rules, the size limits, the weight allowances, and the fees, and they assume those same rules apply everywhere. Airlines vary significantly. Some allow a personal item and a carry-on for free, others charge separately for each, and size limits can differ by inches that make the difference between a bag that fits and one that gets pulled aside at the gate. She has seen travelers forced to pay surprise fees right before boarding, sometimes more than the cost of the ticket itself, simply because they assumed familiar rules from a different airline would apply. The smart move is to check the specific carry-on policy for every airline before packing, including size, weight, and personal item allowances, since even budget carriers on the same route can have completely different restrictions. A few minutes of research before the trip can prevent an expensive surprise standing at the gate with strangers watching. Confidence built from past experience only helps when it is paired with a quick check of current airline-specific rules. She suggests keeping a screenshot of the exact carry-on policy for each trip saved on your phone. So if a dispute happens at the gate, you have the current information ready instead of relying on memory alone. That single habit alone can protect an entire trip from starting with unnecessary stress. 12 mistakes, all avoidable, all common, and all quietly capable of turning a relaxing trip into a stressful one. A former flight attendant who has spent years watching these patterns repeat says the travelers who struggle the most are rarely the inexperienced ones. They are the confident ones who stopped double-checking the small details. If this video helped you see something you had not considered before, subscribe to Fly Smart After 70 for more practical, experience-based travel guidance built specifically for travelers who want fewer surprises and more comfortable trips. Drop a comment letting us know which mistake surprised you the most. And share this with someone who is flying soon, because the smartest travelers are the ones who keep learning even after decades in the air. None of these habits require expensive gear or complicated planning. They simply require a willingness to double-check the small things, instead of relying purely on past experience. That single mindset shift is often the difference between a trip filled with small frustrations and one that feels calm from takeoff to landing. Safe travels, stay alert, and we will see you in the next video.